In the maze of questions, chasing all the facts, we're cooking up some knowledge in our little lab of rats. Equations in our notebooks, coffee in our paws, jokes about statistics and peer review laws. It's the Lab Rat Show where science is better when we talk together.
Welcome to the Lab Rats Show, episode 6. My name is Dr. Anousheh Shayestehpour, and my guest today is Dr. Betsy Wolf, PhD in Education Policy and Research, part-time research scientist at Johns Hopkins University, and a former colleague of mine at the Institute of Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education, where Betsy worked as an education research analyst for the Works Clearinghouse. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Betsy Wolf.
Hello.
Welcome, my mad scientist. What is your favorite cheese?
Ooh, there's so many options to pick from, but I would need the goat cheese, the chèvre, as they call it in France.
Goat cheese has quite a distinct smell. You like it?
And the texture is wonderful. I love it.
Goat cheese is a little too intense for me, but it's growing on me. It's growing on me.
I'm intense. What can I say?
What's so good about your research?
So the Works Clearinghouse reviews existing research and summarizes it for practitioners and researchers. I would say my special expertise is sort of making sense of evaluation findings and looking under the hood to see what's there. Sometimes we have pretty consistent results and we feel confident about whether an intervention worked, but other times we don't. And sometimes we make bold claims that really just aren't backed up by the evidence when you look underneath the hood. So I love making sense of findings. I love thinking about what we know and why we know it. And I love pointing out where we don't know things and maybe we need more research.
Dr. Wolf's current research study is entitled SubGroup Effects, Compositional Effects, and Treatment Effect Heterogeneity in the Works Clearinghouse Study Data. What are the research questions you're investigating?
When researchers don't find positive effects overall, they'll say, oh, there was no positive effects, but this one subgroup finding was positive. And the concern I had was, should we trust that subgroup finding, or are the researchers trying to cherry pick findings, when the overall findings weren't positive and we're not really confident about those results? So my first research question is, are program evaluations differentially effective for specific subgroups of students? And if so, can we see why in the data? So I'm looking within interventions for differential impact, but I'm also analyzing patterns across interventions. The second question is, are there compositional effects? And by that, I mean not differential effects within studies. I mean, for studies with certain types of student populations, do we see different effect sizes across studies where the populations of students in the study overall differ? For example, certain types of interventions are more commonly implemented in high income settings or in low income settings. And do we see differences in terms of intervention effects across those different settings? And the last research question is, how much variation is there within a study in terms of what the findings are? So lots of times studies have more than one finding. They might have 3 findings, they might have 8 findings. But if I look at those findings within a single study, are they telling me the same answer, or are they all over the place? I need to give a shout out to my co-author on this paper, Chris Klager, who was also at the Institute of Education Sciences previously.
The fantastic findings.
So I found that interventions were slightly more effective on average for female students, and for low income students, and slightly less effective for high performing students, as shown in the two columns here. But you can see that the marginal effect is slightly higher for female students and slightly higher for economic disadvantage or low income students. So what this means is that within a study, on average, I see that high performing students aren't benefiting as much. Or it could be that interventions are actually benefiting those students who are coming from disadvantaged economic backgrounds and who benefit the most from those additional investments. And the same is true for females. So for whatever reason, female students seem to benefit more from the interventions, and we don't really know why.
I have theories, but they're not based in anything, just life
Okay.
experience.
This is database. This is database. So the finding for the second research question was that, am I seeing different effect sizes just across studies as a whole, not within study, but across studies as a whole, where the sample characteristics differ across studies? And so this graph is getting at this. And on the surface, you can see that I'm finding larger effect sizes when there's more special education students in the study. And I'm finding larger effect sizes when there's more economically disadvantaged students in the study. And then the other ones sort of overlap with zero to the extent that, I can't really make sense of it. So I don't really find good evidence that I can see that effect sizes differ based on the characteristics of the study sample as a whole. It seems to me more like localized. Within a single study, you might have differential effects, but it's a lot harder to tease out relationships across studies just because you have different interventions, you have different things going on. And so it's really hard to tease out any findings that will relate to sample characteristics alone when you account for some of the other factors. We know from test data that annual learning gains sort of decrease as students get older. So here's a graph of the effect sizes across grades. And sometimes the study has multiple grades, so I took the average of the grades. But we really don't see a clear pattern, meaning even though the annual learning gains sort of decrease over time, we don't see a clear pattern in terms of effect sizes across grades, at least not controlling for everything else. I was also curious to see if the effect sizes differ systematically, giving the timing of the outcome. In this graph, you can see the x-axis is a year since the start of the intervention. For the most part, you kind of see it goes up and down, but you don't really see a clear pattern in terms of magnitude of effect size and year since the start of intervention. How much heterogeneity, which is a fancy word, is there in the findings? And what this means is like a study might have 3 to 8 findings or 1 to 8 findings or whatever it is. Sometimes there are multiple findings in the same outcome domain, like the study has 4 findings on literacy, for example. And are those findings giving me the same answer? Or are they giving me different answers? Every vertical line is a different study and outcome domain pairing. And you can see that the range of the effect sizes is shockingly large within a single study. Even though you have subgroup effects that are sort of all over the place, but even sometimes the full sample findings are all over the place. What I take away from this paper is, yes, I see these, slight patterns and I see these slight differences in average effect size. But when I look at this graph, I'm like, I don't know that those slight averages matter as much or matter more than there's just so much variation going on, right? And to the extent we're taking just the average, and maybe not everyone is, maybe once everyone's picking the outcome they care the most about, maybe that's a good thing. But if we're looking at the average finding per study, we're losing so much information here that I would be concerned about that. Like if the range of effects is so large, maybe we do want to look under the hood and try to figure out why they're different or how they're different and which finding maybe we should be most concerned about.
Why should people believe in your research?
You don't trust anyone's data but your own. So you should believe the research because I care a lot about evidence and I care a lot about getting details right. And I'm always willing to ask questions in terms of looking under the hood for evaluations.
Why does research matter?
Well, I would say education research matters a lot because we want to be sure that what we're doing works for kids, right? To the extent we're not honest about that, or we're not collecting data on that, we're not analyzing that, we're not looking under the hood, then we don't really know if what we're doing improves student outcomes. Most people agree that we actually do want to move the needle for kids. I think there's some disagreement how to get there. Without evidence, without having data, we're flying blind, right? And that serves no one's interests well.
Listen to the full interview for more research and more laughter exclusively on the Lab Rats Show podcast. Visit labratseducation.com to learn more.